Hey everyone, it's Jeff Douglas, Doctor of Physical Therapy and Golf Strength and Conditioning Coach. And today we're going to go over the principles of training your core. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the core, what kind of the muscles are a part of it, and then how we can train these different planes of motion of the core. All right. So simple anatomy lesson. All right. Many times when we talk about the core, it's usually kind of about our diaphragm. And then it goes down to what's called our pelvic floor that sits down here, all right? Most people don't know about the pelvic floor, but it's also something very important so that we can maintain pressure in our abdominal area to help stabilize the back. But we're going to talk about the different panels, I like to call it, when it comes to training, right? So our core, there is a front panel, a side panel, and a back panel, right? So if I was to take this, it would be the front panel here, and that's going to be like the rectus abdominis, the abs that we always see when you do crunches and people flex that pop out, all right? We have these side panels, okay, muscles on the side that provide support, and that's going to be our oblique muscles that can help with a little bit of rotation. So with our golfers, we have our internal, external obliques that help with the rotation of our spine here. And we also have something that's on the back called the quadratus lumborum that connects to our 12th rib and then comes down and connects to our top of our pelvis here, all right? And that one, if I was on myself, would be about right here. And that helps with lateral stability, all right? And then we have our back panel. So all the muscles on the back, rectus spinae muscles, right? Our lats back there can help a little bit protecting that as well, that we also need to train, all right? So when we want to train our core, we want to train the three panels, all right? Finding ways to incorporate this throughout our training in the week to make sure that these are staying strong and you're working the joints through those motions in some way, somehow, to make sure our joints don't get stiff and our joints stay healthy. So when it comes to training our core, there are different, obviously, philosophies out there in this world about what you should and shouldn't do. And I'm going to talk about isometric training, all right? And that's where when we contract our muscles, they don't change length, all right? So examples of this are going to be like a plank. We get in, we contract our muscles, and we hold that position. That's isometric training, all right? There is some school of thought out there that they get into the fact that we really shouldn't be doing a ton of flex, like actual movement, like in the crunches, that repetitive motions like this can be bad for the back. I'm on the side that if we do the proper progressions, if you do the right amount of volume, allow enough recovery, you're going to be perfectly safe with doing these motions. But I still train both, all right? So I'm going to show you a series of exercises for each panel that's going to be a way to train each isometrically. So like if I was doing a side one and I did a side plank, that would be a way to isometrically train the muscles on our side. And then I'm going to show you how to dynamically train all these as well, aka going through the actual motion with resistance so that we can train the full range of motion, especially in golfers, right? Thinking like we have to bend. When we come up, we extend a little bit, so we need to work some extension, and we come down, right? We get that side bend. So we need to make sure we're training a lot of these different motions. We just can't do anything isometrically because we do get into different positions, and so we need to make sure we're strong and have the range of motion for all that, all right? So I'm going to show you an isometric for each panel, and then I'm going to show you a different dynamic motion resistance exercise that you can. Okay, so the first one we're going to go over is a exercise to work the anterior or the front panel, okay, isometrically. So if this is the spine, we're going to work all our muscles on the front part here. And so what this is called is a hollow body hold. So what you're going to do is you're going to come on your back, and you're going to put your arms straight up. Make sure your back is flat on the ground, and then bring your legs so they're at 90 degrees, or they're sitting on a chair, or it would be if they were a chair there. You hold this, curl up just a little bit, and you should feel your abs tighten up right here. So they're contracting, but they're not moving, all right? If this is easy, you can either extend your arms back. The same thing. Don't want your back to arch when we're doing this. That has to stay there. That makes it more difficult. You can move your legs out, or you can do both to make it even harder, all right? And you will do it for a set amount of time. So say we want to do 15-second holds, and you want to do the difficulty of exercise. By the end of that 15, you're shaking and you're a little tired, all right? You can add other motions in like this But again, my abs are just staying in the same position when I'm doing this. So there's just different ways to challenge it, make it more difficult while we're working an isometric. All right, so now we're gonna go over an exercise that you can do to work the anterior core dynamically. So just going through a full range of it, all right? And so all we're gonna do on this one is just a simple crunch, all right? So you're gonna start here, and we're going to slowly round your spine and come up till you get to, so that you're on your sacrum more. And then one at a time, each vertebrae, slowly unwind. So I can feel my low back touching one at a time. Now I'm in my mid back, nice and slow and controlled, and I'm feeling this work. I'm now changing the length of my muscles when I'm doing this exercise, and I'm working the full flexion part of that range of motion that we have in our spine. So this is a dynamic one. We have to train all the positions that a joint can be in to make sure that we are strong and can control all the degrees, and that's going to help us be a better athlete, and it's going to help us probably minimize our risk for injuries if we can safely control our joints in all positions. All right, so that is one way that we can work the anterior core dynamically, making sure we're going back and forth, nice and controlled. And now we're going to move on to the next. Okay, so we're going to talk about our back panel, or the sagittal plane. All right, so we already worked the front, or the crunch part of the sagittal plane, which is forward and backwards of sagittal. Now we're going to work the extension part, our back muscles here. All right, so an isometric one that we can do with this is just going to be a plank. All right, so we're going to come down, we're going to get into our forearms, and then you're going to get up so your back is flat. All right, this is a anti-extension exercise because your back is going to want to droop like this. When I get here, a lot of people, you'll see this, and they're going into extension. We have to make sure we're not going into that, all right? So we're going to hold this position. Again, sets and reps vary based on where you're at, what skill you're doing, and things like that. But, general, I like to only do about 10, 15-second holds and do reps of it while we're working on building max contraction, so we're building more strength, all right? So elbows here. Get your back in a good position. Make sure you have a mirror or someone watching you so you're not here or you're not way up like this. Okay, and then act like you're trying to rip your elbows down. All right, when you do this, you're going to feel your abs engage. It's trying to lock your rib cage down. So you're going to pull down. You should start shaking. You're working so hard. Squeeze your butt as tight as you can. Squeeze your quads as tight as you can. And you're going to hold that for about 10, 15 seconds. After the 10, 15 seconds, you take your rest break, and then you do your reps with that versus doing like a 1 or 2 minute hold. I like to build more strength and power when I'm doing these exercises. All right, so now we're going to go over how we can train the back panels dynamically, and there's kind of a version that's isometrically, and I'll explain that a little bit as I go in here. But this is called a 45 degree extension, back extension machine, right? And I love this as a way to train people low backs for strength, endurance. A lot of people who have low back pain, it's a great exercise, all right? Many ways to modify it, make it easier, ways to make it harder, right? I could take some weights and hold on to it when I do it. But you're gonna come in here, make sure your heels are pushed up against that pad. You want this to be right at your hip, all right? So that your back has the ability to move. So we're locking our hips in place, but we want our back to move. So I want you to look at these subtle differences. If I come down here and I come like this, and then come up, my back for the most part is staying in line when I'm doing it. It might be a little bit of curve, but for the most part, it's all moving as a unit when I do it like this, all right? So yes, this is dynamically because our muscles are lengthening a little bit, but it's also kind of isometrically when I compare it to this other version where here I could work on curling my spine, and now I'm going one segment at a time, and now to train full flexion of that back right there, right? So I went nice and slow, curled one at a time like a domino, boom, 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 boom. And now I can return that, right? I start coming up. Now I'm going to extend one vertebrae at a time. So that's a more dynamic version of like a dynamic movement there, right? Whereas here, I'm kind of keeping my back in the same spot, but we are, lengthening it and shortening it when we do it. Whereas this other version here, we just go segment by segment. to maximize all the flexion extension at each segment, because we want to be able to control each segment of our spine to have a healthy spine. Those who have a hinge point or can't control, a lot of times those are the people that come into my office and are in pain, all right? Because one joint's doing all the work while the other ones are stiff. It's trying to make up for the stiffness in that joint, all right? If you want to make this harder, add longer holds, or I would have weights, and I would come down and come up with some external load with the exercise. So that is a way to train our back panel or the sagittal plane extension dynamically. Okay, so now we have gone over how to train the sagittal plane and our anterior panels. We have gone over the sagittal plane, how to train our posterior panels, our back muscles. And then we have talked about the frontal plane, which is side to side, and that's going to be our lateral panels. And now we're going to talk about the transverse plane. The transverse plane is our rotational plane when we do this, and that's going to incorporate muscles from all the different panels when we do this, like especially our obliques, all right? When we're going, they're going to be helping us turn a little bit. Some of the muscles in our back are going to help with the rotation as well. What we're going to do right here is the isometric version for the transverse plane or our rotational plane. So this is called a Pallof press. You can take a band or you can take a cable machine. You come out and you put the handle right in line with that sternum. I like to get in a golf posture when I do this, okay? And then all you do is you can push your arm out and then you bring it back in, nice and slow and controlled. It's not a quick pump, okay? But what happens here is the weight wants to pull me this way, but my muscles are isometrically contracting now, holding that position while I go back and forth, because the farther it gets away from me, the longer the lever, the harder it is on me to hold that position. It's easier to keep things when it's, or prevent things from moving when we keep it close to our body. So we come out, in, out is one version. Another version is you could do some walkouts with it, both ways, all right, if you want to change it up. So that right there is called the Pallof press, and it is a good way to train our transverse plane isometrically. Okay, so in this exercise, we're going to go over a way to dynamically train our transverse plane for our core, all right? So we're going to get the cable machine. You can also use a band. You're going to put it straight out, and then we're going to start with max rotation this way and slowly come across to max rotation the other way. We want to control it the whole way, and then during this exercise, this is where our muscles are lengthening and shortening. So this is what makes it dynamic and not isometrically versus the Pallof press where we were locked in place with that, all right? So again, bring it out here, come back. And that's going to allow us to strengthen the full range of motion to make sure we're strong at all parts of that rotation. Now understand, I like cable machines more with this because it keeps the same amount of resistance all the way through, whereas if I had a band, it's going to be lighter resistance, and the farther I get away, it's stronger resistance over here. So I like cable because it keeps that resistance the same no matter where we are with it, and not one side's getting a lot more love than the other side, all right? So that is one version of how you can train your core or dynamically in the transverse plane or rotational plane. Okay, so now we're going to go over how we can train our frontal plane, which is the side to side, or our lateral panels, okay? So to do this isometrically is what we're going to go over first, which is not changing the length of our muscle. We're going to do some farmer's marching, all right? So when I have this weight and I pick up my leg, my body will want to naturally drop like this. My muscles over here have to go, nope, we're not going to allow that to happen, and they are going to fire and hold that position so we don't get this hip drop or our side bending. So take two weights, make sure they're heavy, shoulders back, right off the side of your hips here, don't let them touch, and you're just going to march in place, and each time you pick your leg up, your muscles are going to work, and your hip muscles as well in this one, so that you don't drop, all right? To make it harder, you can add a movement to it where you're walking in a straight line. These are just called farmer's carries right here. If you dropped one of the weights and just did one weight, that's called a suitcase carry, like that, same thing. The whole time now, these muscles on this side, on the lateral part, are working so that we don't drop. So that is a way to train isometrically your lateral panels. Okay, so now we're going to go over the dynamic way to train our lateral panel or the frontal plane. All right, so we did the farmer's carries to work at isometrically, and then when you look at this 45-degree back extension, it's going to be kind of the same principles, but now we're just going to be sideways to work the frontal plane here. All right, so same thing. You want to make sure that the pads are on your hip, so it gives your back all the motion. Lock your hips in place so we can move at our back. All right, and I'm going to tell you this. We're going to go over the kind of asymmetric dynamic version, and then a more dynamic motion where we're kind of working through each segment with it, just like the back panel that you saw. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come on down until you feel a good stretch, and then you're going to feel your abs and muscles on this side work. So I'm lengthening the muscles here, shortening the muscles to come up, and you'll feel it all on this side. Again, I'm moving my back almost as a whole segment. There is going to be some motion there, all right, but it's kind of like an isometric version versus this is going to be more dynamic compared to that one, is if I curl one segment, so my spine, I'm going boop, 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 one segment at a time, like a domino, all right, and you're going to see just slower, and I'm trying to train each segment of my back to make sure each one can move properly. So once I get down there, we're going to come up nice and slow. This is a lot more taxing because you're going slower, so your muscles are under tension for a longer period of time. All right, but you can see how that one is just much slower, and I'm thinking about bending one vertebrae to the left at a time. When that one makes its full lateral bending, the next one goes, and then the next one goes, and then the next one goes, and then you reverse it, coming up one at a time. Okay, versus the whole unit moving with it. All right, to make it harder, go slower, or you can add, again, weight. You can hold on to weight here, or you can have like a kettlebell, dumbbell down on the side. So that right there is going to be your way to train your lateral panels dynamically. All right, so this wraps up the series of how to train your core in the different panels isometrically and dynamically. I hope you learned a lot from this, and if you have any questions, please comment below.
Thank you for watching this video. If you found this information useful or helpful, please subscribe to this channel. Just drag that mouse right over to the red box, click it so that you're notified the next time that I post a video. Again, thank you so much.